Along with individual experts, Surgeon Masters brings you life improvement strategies in 10 minutes. These proven principles and strategies are easy to learn and can be applied immediately, allowing you to practice your best. Here's your host, Jeff Smith.
On this episode of the Surgeon Masters mini podcast, I have with me psychiatrist and performance coach, Dr. Ryan Davis. Ryan also works with adults, adolescents, and children, specializing in psychodynamic, individual, family, and couple psychotherapy. Ryan is a performance coach working with elite athletes and other high-performance professionals. Ryan, thank you for being with us today.
Good morning, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
So I don't know if it's just a coincidence of the highs and lows of the weekend for me emotionally, and maybe it's balancing a lot of different things, but I'm here speaking with psychiatrists, not for the purpose of that aspect of your knowledge, but I am loving the idea of having a conversation with you and your work with elite athletes. Ryan, tell us a little bit more about you. What do you think is important to talk about today?
Yeah, so thank you. I think today what I would like to talk about is life balance. And it's a cliche in so many ways that, I think we all talk about it, but don't really necessarily know how to do it. As, I mentioned, I work with a lot of elite athletes and professionals. And one way that each of those people got to where they ultimately got to was because they are go-getters. They're type A, they're alpha. They work really hard and want to be the best in everything they do. The issue with that is that we have limited time. We have limited resources, and that one resource that's most important for this conversation is time. And the way I like to break things down often is sort of into a tripod with three different components that represent three important things in a person's life. For sake of conversation today, I'll use self-care, career, and relationships. And by way of analogy, I like to think about them through the tripod as using three fingers: the thumb, the index finger, and the middle finger. And imagine placing a rubber band around those three fingers. And as a thought experiment, imagine pulling out any one of those two fingers. And the more pressure you apply to one of those fingers, and we'll call the thumb career, as you pull the thumb out, as you make that more important, as you increase time, what has to happen is the pressure goes out on the finger, the pressure around the other two, career and self-care, are going to pull in towards the center. Their importance is going to be diminished. So you always have to think about, for each individual, that there's going to be a give and take of those three components. And there's often more, but for the sake of this conversation, I think those big three. And the more you put time into your career, the less time you're going to have for the other two. And so a person wants to be the best at all of these things, but at the end of the day, I think what's really important is that the individual kind of comes up to a decision about where they would like to be for, let's say, 50% career, 20% self-care, and 30% relationships, and making sure that they are kind of pulling that rubber band in such a way that they're actually meeting those wants and wishes.
It's a good point. I mean, and really, I think a very common coaching goal or focus is on that time management. So this is a great analogy. I totally understand how you're pulling on one, but that happens at times during our career. So if you're trying to create that balance or appropriate distribution of your effort on the rubber band, is it just the noticing of what that's doing? Tell me a little bit more.
So ultimately, where this conversation ends up happening often is when people are going through some form of burnout, and when people are unhappy, when they're disappointed in how things are. Oftentimes, it's because one of those three is disproportionate to where they ultimately want to be, where often one is too high or another is too low, and that's when the person notices it. And the burnout happens sometimes unconsciously, sometimes without their knowledge of why, but it's often because that equation is sort of out of line based on their values and goals.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly can appreciate that myself and a lot of surgeons will say family is their number one priority, and their actions and or the pull of their career is such that doesn't really pan out, right? Doesn't feel that way in reality, right?
I think that's right. I think that, again, a lot of alpha type A people, we get a lot of feedback from colleagues and patients and in the athletic world, fans and trophies and such for our professional endeavors. But as family individuals, we don't necessarily get those same accolades for the time we put in. And sometimes I think that simply on an operant conditioning, behavior that is recognized as positive is rewarded and the amount of that behavior increases. I think that that doesn't happen as much from the relationship side as it does in the professional side. And that may be one of the reasons why you get that skewing.
And so when you're dealing with your clients, give us a couple more examples of how you've used the tripod and the rubber band to kind of assist a performer to come out of burnout or start to address that?
So I think that one of the general ways that it happens is that people, it's that whole 110% mentality, which we all know that, if you've done any math in your lifetime, there's no such thing as 110% that you can give. And so when people would say, well, all right, in a perfect world, and if you ask them independently, they'll say, well, I would like to do 40% to career, 40% to relationships, and I would like to have, at least 30% for self-care. And you do the math when they actually get there and, that's 110%. It's very infrequently that if you had, 3 conversations and asked them to do it independently, the amount that they are going to give to each percentage is going to add up to over 100. Mm-hmm. And so I think that just that recognition that it is a zero-sum game and you really do need to live in a world of reality where that number adds up to only 100 and you've got to make some really tough choices.
So maybe the message that I'm kind of getting is, because I've done it myself, right? I've had to describe my investment. In fact, I think I am often partitioning the 100% all related to career sometimes, right? How am I going to distribute my work? And I say that I'm putting 120% into my work. Well, gosh, the rubber band must have fallen off one of the fingers, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that the interesting thing about this analogy is, one of my best friend from medical school is a surgeon, and he has clinical, he has family, and he has research. And so for him, maybe that there is not really the self-care on that tripod. And so he's, doing it with 2 parts of his career and trying to balance those, plus the everything else leg of the tripod. And so we're not locked into those 3 things being those 3 things. They really can be any 3 important things in your life.
So do me a favor, and just for our listeners, just kind of give us a good summary of what you want them to take home in this great subject.
So I think one thing is to, take a few moments and just sort of close your eyes and think about where you would like that 100% to be divided into. And maybe even before that, think about your top 3 things, because there's a lot of people that might have 5 things, 10 things, or 1 thing. And so I think having some, for the person that has 1 thing, maybe career 100%, recognizing that that might not be a fully lived life and trying to see if they can add a couple more things. And for the person that has 5, trying to scale it down to maybe the top 3 important things. And for the person that does have 3, but wants to do 100% in each, I think taking a few moments to think about where they would like things to be.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise in this.
Thank you very much.
There you have it. In less than 10 minutes, this is Jeff Smith along with Dr. Ryan Davis. Until the next episode of Life Improvement Strategies for the Surgeon Who Wants More. Ciao.
Now, take 10 minutes and put your plan into action to practice your best.